Cafe, sponsored by Sigma Xi, the Scientific Honor Society, and the Office of the Vice President for Research. I'm David Ingram, the Vice President of the local chapter of Sigma Xi and the Chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy. This week's cafe will be given by Paul Benedict, Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship, on impact research, rallying people and resources to your cause. Our next Science Cafe will be given by Professor Jeff Diabalco from Environmental Studies. He'll be speaking about pursuing climate adaptation and resilience in unexpected places by unexpected means, drawing on examples from efforts right here in Athens County to internationally in the Balkans. He will detail research and policy work conducted by Ohio University students, faculty and staff that highlights the need to move beyond the expected climate responses. Science Cafe information can be found at www.ohio.edu/sciencecafe. Now, over to Paul Benedict.
Thank you so much, David, and welcome everybody out there in the interwebs. I am Paul Benedict. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship. I want to talk to you this evening about what you can do to translate your research into impact. That can take lots of forms, right? It can be in the form of a new business. It can be in the form of an innovation inside of an existing organization like a university. It can be in the form of a social venture, right? In any of those cases, what we want to be able to do is rally people, resources, money to your cause to be able to bring the theory, the research to life to impact customers, impact users, impact society. So what I'd like to do this evening is I have a top 7 format, and Rox, if you can advance the slide. We had some technical difficulties earlier. Got some gremlins in the system, and some very 2020 things going on this evening. So in my top 7 format, I'm going to talk about 7 tips that can help you unlock opportunity for your research. And I start with a simple quiz. Why do you think there are 7 tips? Is it because 7's a lucky number? Is it because I couldn't think of 10? Is it so that you can track my progress? And if this presentation isn't very good, at least you can know how close we are to the end. Or is it D, all of the above? And if you're so motivated to type in chat, enter your answers now. Rox, you can hit enter and reveal the correct response. Of course, it's all of the above. So I want to walk through these tips. And at the end, I want to show 3 examples of research coming out of Ohio University that either already is having impact or we are in the process of working on helping it have an impact beyond just the science, the engineering, and the academic nature of it. So, Rox, if you can advance to the next slide. So, the very first thing that you need to do to rally resources and people to your cause is to have passion and have a story. The science, the nature of the research itself academically is good and fine, and I'm certainly not going to say it isn't. Certainly not inside of university. I'm not going to say that. And it's not what people ultimately care about, right? It's not what is going to motivate stakeholders, be they potential collaborators and external partners, certainly not funders. It's not going to be what motivates them to support you, right? So you want to start with your why. What motivated you to do this work in the first place? If you have a personal story, if you have a personal connection to why you're doing the research, being willing to be a little vulnerable and share that actually matters, right? Your partners, your investors, your benefactors are going to respond to the emotion that you convey. So if you're dry and not showing any emotion and sort of going through the paces, and frankly, if you're a little too rehearsed and a little too robotic, your audience is gonna feed off of that, and their energy is gonna drop to that level, right? So if you're conveying your passion for the work, in many cases, those of you out there listening and watching, this may be your life's work. You may have been spending decades on this research, or it may be the culmination of, you're early in your career and you're just now starting to do research, and you're finally getting to really focus on the stuff that you love. You want to be able to convey that. And I get that can be uncomfortable, but being able to share that story is important. Rox, if you could go to... Yes, please.
You have your first question.
I do. Oh, what is it?
So, is there such a thing as too much information? In other words, can there be too much passion? How do you, balance the passion and the content, I think is what they're trying to get at.
It's a great question, and I would say, of course, but my suspicion is that the line is further out than you think. And I'll give you an example, not from Ohio University. So the most prestigious business plan competition for graduate students around the country is held every year at Rice, and Rice University in Houston. And 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, the winning team, their technology was basically a gyroscopic, self-correcting basket to level beneath a helicopter in a rescue sort of environment, right? So their concept was, you can drop this basket, it's going to self-correct, and instead of the basket swinging all around in the wind, it'll stay level below the helicopter. Really interesting technology. The team pitching it did not lead with the fans and the accelerometers and the gyroscopes. That's not what they led with. What they led with was the founder had been a rescue helicopter pilot, and in fighting fires and getting people out of really dangerous circumstances. And in one particular circumstance, tragically, he lost a teammate. A teammate lost his life because of a basket swinging too dramatically, and he was lost in a fire. And he was unafraid to share that story, and that this wasn't just about the research for him. It wasn't just about what could he do with the technology. It was about, I lost my friend, and I will forever be affected by that, and I will stop at nothing to solve this problem. And this really having impact is hard, right? So being able to convey your commitment to it beyond just, well, I need to publish, or, well, this was my dissertation, it's the best thing I could come up with, right? That I in my core, in my soul, I feel the need to solve this problem. So it's a long answer to a short question, but I hope that was helpful. Thank you, whoever asked it. Then the next point in our 7 tips is to be authentic. So be yourself. If you're nervous, if you're uncomfortable, own it. It is a fun fact that Gallup has pulled this question many years ago, and Americans fear public speaking more than we fear death. So, which, if you process that for a second, it's insane. But if you think about it a little bit, it does make a little bit of sense. So if you're uncomfortable public speaking, if you're uncomfortable pitching your work to an audience, that's okay. You're not alone, right? And we all get nervous from time to time. The good news is, and somebody with better biology knowledge can correct me if this is a myth and I'm just making it up, but the butterflies in your stomach, I think, at least this is what I've been told, or maybe I read it somewhere, that's adrenaline. That you're Your adrenaline is giving you superpowers to do great. You care. You really want to do well, right? So when you feel those butterflies coming on, embrace them. Like, oh, great. If you don't get the butterflies, you should worry. Do I care enough? So, in presenting your research and in pitching these ideas to win resources, maybe millions of dollars, you don't have to be the most extroverted, dynamic speaker. If you feel awkward, if you feel uncomfortable, if you're naturally introverted, that's fine, because Rox, if you can advance to the next slide. The third key skill is command. So if you know your stuff, if you're an expert and confident in what you know and humble enough about what you don't know, that is going to be attractive to your audience, right? That your knowledge is appealing and can help you overcome all sorts of awkwardness or insecurities. I will say that practicing a presentation can be or is extremely important, and even writing out a script, but don't be so wedded to the script that it's like a tape rolling in your head and you have to access the particular word. And if you forget a particular word choice, now what do I do? Right?
Actually, that leads into a question that you have.
Oh, great.
So the question is what's the best way to practice?
That is an excellent question. So there are lots of different ways you can do it. I try lots of different things. I will talk to myself. I will put myself on video and watch it back. If I'm in the car, I can safely turn on the voice memo function and just talk, and then listen back to whatever gibberish I spouted. Hopefully it's good. It's certainly not. It's not going to be exactly the same every time, nor should it be, right? So, so repetition matters, and you want to know the stuff well enough that you can just show up and talk, and it feels like you know it, but you're not reading from a script. And I may or may not be a good example of that this evening. You can comment and chat if I am or not. Please be gentle. But that is a way to do it. And also practicing in front of other people can be extremely helpful and effective. A peril that we run into as experts is that you know your material far better than your audience does, by a mile. And the danger in that is that you might assume some things that are common knowledge. Of course, they're common knowledge to you, that maybe aren't quite as clear to your audience, even a very sophisticated audience. And so having some sounding boards, being able to prep with other people and gauge, where maybe are you assuming some things that are understood that aren't, can be extremely useful too. And I will say that in every circumstance I've ever done this sort of work, I've had experiences where I was too close to it, or people I was coaching were too close to the information and needed an external perspective. Thank you again for the question. So now we're shifting from your demeanor and the dynamics of your presentation into what you say, as opposed to how you communicate it. So I said at the beginning, your passion and your story matter. Being able to communicate a why for the work itself is incredibly important. What good can you bring to the world? How can you make it a better place by providing a social good, by getting rid of a social ill? How big is the opportunity to have an impact? Are you going to impact a classroom? Are you going to impact a town, a university, a state, a country? What's the scale of that opportunity? And don't be afraid to think big about where you want to go in 5 to 10 years. Do you know? Can you say with great assurance that, I say this is where it's going to be in 5 years, and that's absolutely what we're going to do? Of course not. I was early stage venture capitalist, investor, and entrepreneur myself before teaching, and every business pitch ever, every entrepreneurial or innovative pitch ever, has similar goals about where do we want to be in 5 to 10 years, right? They all want to be big. They all want to get bought or go public, right? And virtually none of them achieve that vision in exactly the way they imagined, right? That's okay. It's at least as much about how you think, how you communicate, how you process information, and how you're exciting the people around you to go with you on this journey, and what things need to be true to get there than necessarily you're perfectly predicting the future.
Here's a question for you.
Oh, fantastic. I was pausing for a moment, hoping there would be.
I tend to be a little bit conservative. Is it better to undersell or oversell?
So it's a great question. I would refer you back to point 2, which is authenticity. So you got to be who you are. And I would say that I don't know if the questioner has Midwestern roots. I will say that if you don't have Midwestern roots, maybe your time here at Ohio University has given you Midwestern roots. And one of the great things about Midwesterners is that we tend to be a humble bunch, and fairly conservative in our visions of the future, and perhaps a little risk averse. I would say that on average, our peers on the coasts are less constrained, for what it's worth. I would say that having some mentors, having some coaches, some people around you that can test your assumptions and test your vision, and challenge you, can be really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you've got to believe in what you're saying, though. And if you don't believe the vision you're communicating, that will absolutely come through.
Midwesterner, by the way, was the answer.
Oh, well, it is with a great deal of affection and self-awareness. So the next in our 7 tips, and we're at number 5 already, so we're making good progress, hopefully, is who. So first why, then who. So who needs the problem solved? Who's going to benefit? In a commercial context, these are your customers. In a social context, these are beneficiaries. This is maybe a community or a demographic group. And you want to understand the linkage between the why, the problem being solved, and who benefits. And you want to be able to understand, okay, define those people. How many of them are there? How do we go get them? Can you start with a small-ish target group initially and then grow from there? For all of the positives and negatives of Facebook, and I understand we're live streaming on Facebook right now. One of the things that Mark Zuckerberg did well in the initial conception of Facebook in 2004 and beyond was he started very narrow and deep. So what I mean by that is, and what he meant by that was, he focused on a very small group of customers who desperately needed the solution, who really wanted the solution, right? The initial users of Facebook were just students at Harvard. You had to have the harvard.edu email address to be able to create a Facebook account, right? So he started very narrow, a few thousand people, and deep. They really wanted this tool. Only later did Facebook expand to other universities, and then actually several years later open up to anybody over the age of 13. But it was that initial focus that served Facebook very well. So in our context, it can be effective to think about what is a narrow group of customers we can serve now, or beneficiaries, and then how do we go beyond that. So as an example, there was a student presented in the Expo, the virtual Expo last spring, and the Expo pitch competition with a interactive educational device display to go in public schools and libraries and get kids and the public interested in computer science and art, like that intersection. His vision for it was starting small, so having one device that he would take around to local school districts in Southeast Ohio, but then, no reason to think it can't go beyond that through the state and through the country. So thinking about how you grow from there can be helpful. Other questions on this point, Rox?
Yes, you do have a question.
Great.
What happens if you have a vision for your target audience and your investors tell you another? What do you do?
So, yeah, it's a great question. So, one of the great benefits and great challenges of being an entrepreneur or being an innovator is you can get lots of advice from lots of people, right? There are lots of mentors out there, and I would say that in my career, what I've seen is that people tend to be fairly generous with their time and trying to help somebody up and coming figure out where they go, right? And I personally get a ton of joy in trying to coach students and grad students and others in the community on these sorts of things. And the trick is you need to develop the antenna as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, to know what advice do I need to listen to, what advice is good advice that I actually need to act upon, and what things might be well-intentioned but misinformed, or understanding a perspective but perhaps not my or our perspective. The worst thing you can do is just listen to whoever the last person you talked to was. So you have mentors, you have coaches, you have experts around you, and they're all giving you different advice. You can't change your mind, remake your vision based on each conversation you have. But it's some of it is about understanding what credibility, what knowledge does your coach or mentor bring to this advice, your investor, and another part of it is, in the preponderance of evidence, right? If you've got 10 advisors and you trust them all roughly equally, and seven of them say this is more or less a direction you should go, and there are 3 outliers, then useful to have the outliers to challenge your assumptions, but don't necessarily alter your vision on that basis. Thanks, Rox, and whoever out there asked the question. So finally, we're already at point 6. We're only now getting to the what. We're only now getting to what's the unique solution to the problem or opportunity that you've identified, right? This is the product. This is the underlying secret sauce of the technology. Somebody rang the bell, and I've got dogs barking. I don't know if you and the interwebs can hear that. Good times in the pandemic. What was that?
I said a little.
Okay, good. I'm only sad that I don't get to see all of our viewers' dogs out there. I'm very pro dog in Zoom or Teams meetings. Anyway, back on topic. So, it is important to talk about what the underlying secret sauce and what makes your research, the technology special, perhaps defensible, but it's not the first thing you do, right? Rox, we can move on to the next one. And then finally, the last question is how you're going to do it. So you've done this research, you have a proof of concept, you have a theory, you have something that works in a simulation, something that works in a computer model, something that works in a small physical manifestation of a prototype, right? Now to bring it out to the world, to have impact at scale, what do you need? That includes people, that includes money, it can include equipment, right? And you want to be clear about what those things are, how much they're going to cost, and then what meaningful milestones is this next round of resource, people, money, equipment. What next milestones is that going to get you, right? Does it get you to a commercialized product? Does it get you to a full-scale implementation of a social initiative? Does it get you to finishing the patents and having the product in the first hands of customers and users, right? You want to try to be clear about that, expecting that there's probably going to be another phase of resources you're going to need down the road. What investors, what supporters, benefactors care about is that their help is going to get you to some meaningful gate, some meaningful milestone that makes you more likely to succeed. I would add here that in all the years that I've been doing entrepreneurship, I've never met a team that was fully formed at their origination, at their birth, right? All teams have additional talent that they lack, that they need, and it is a good sign, not a bad sign, to be self-aware and transparent about what are those other resources, that other talent that you need. It helps in a very big way to have a plan for how you go get it, or how you go get those people, how you recruit them, or having the mentors, the coaches, the investors with the networks that can help you get those people. But that is an important part of this process as well.
Paul, I have a question going back to the what. It says, I think I have a great idea, and I'm a little bit afraid to share it because I'm afraid somebody might take it. What do I do?
It's a great question, and it's a question we get all the time. So I preface this by saying, there are things that you can and should do to protect yourself, and we can come back to that in a second. And I have seen far more opportunities fail, die on the vine, for lack of customer feedback, lack of talking to potential partners, or either in industry or in other institutions, right? I've seen far more things die because they were held too close to the vest, based on fear, than the opposite. Then they're stolen and somebody else did them. It is, so I said earlier that being humble is important, and not to contradict myself, being a little bit arrogant is appropriate. The truth is, and I think it's even more true now, people are busy, and people have their own complicated lives and how they're managing doing their day-to-day. The idea that somebody else is going to hear your idea and abandon what they've been focused on to take your thing and try to do it better than you can, those chances, that likelihood of that is infinitesimally small. Does it happen? Yes. Have I seen it happen? Maybe once. But the other truth is that if you're the right person, if you have the right team to actually execute upon this idea and bring this research to impact in the world, your competition isn't going to be what destroys that or prevents that, right? That in all my experience, that the execution of the team, how you bring it to the world, these are things within your control, and almost all the time, that is the determinant of success or failure not what other people are doing. Thank you for the question. Now, I will say, file a provisional patent, put that stake in the ground to buy you a year to file a full patent application if your invention, your discovery is patentable. If it isn't, try to understand where that line is between your know-how and what is truly secret sauce, like algorithms, and speaking broadly about an architecture, for example, or an approach. So in closing, here in this first part, we've got 7 tips. The first 3, as I mentioned, are about how you communicate. Right? It's about you as a presenter, either in verbally or in writing. The second 4, why, who, what, how, are about what you communicate. So Rox, we can keep doing questions. I have a couple videos here to show that might be representative of research that has made impact or can. I would say that if there are more questions, we might be better served fielding those than watching the videos.
Well, we do have one question right now. It's kind of specific. It's about a student who has an idea.
Okay.
What kind of resources are there at the university? And that's all it asks. So it's pretty open-ended.
It's a very nicely teed up question. It's a hanging, spinning slider that I should put in the seats. So come see me. So the Center for Entrepreneurship exists to help students bring ideas to life. We have people like me, my first name shared brother Paul Mass, and others in the university to help students develop their ideas. We also have potential funding. So there's a thing called the Bobcat Seed Fund, out of which we can make grants up to $3,000 each to students developing ideas. And so we have given grants of $15,000 to date to 6 different student entrepreneurs. My AirPods just died. Can you hear me, Rox?
Your audio is having some issues.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just had to disconnect my AirPods. We seem destined to have more gremlins tonight. So as I was saying, so you can go to bobcatseedfund.com. We'll redirect you to a site on a page on the Center for Entrepreneurship website. There's a description of the fund and how to apply. We have, as I said, we have awarded 6 grants of $15,000 in total to date. Some of those concepts have gone on and raised substantially more money post-graduation. One in particular is now well into the millions of dollars raised and more than a dozen employees and really off to the races. So we are very happy to help all of you out there. So you can email me at benedict@ohio.edu. You can also book an appointment with me by going to calendly.com/pbenedict. There was on the first slide on this deck, there was a scrolling URL at the bottom of the slides with my public schedule. So you're more than welcome to shoot me an email or schedule an appointment with me. In the current times, that's via Zoom. In the post-pandemic times, hopefully that'll return to coffee at Court Street Coffee or Donkey. I would add to, while I'm on that subject of resources, the number of competitions out there for students developing interesting ideas, whether they're intended to be social or commercial, is pretty incredible.
we have competitions here at OU where we give each year in aggregate about $10,000 of cash. There are external competitions around the country. Ironically, many of the best funded ones are in Texas. So I mentioned Rice. For grad students, top prize there is $350,000 to $400,000. I said again, $350,000 to $400,000. There's the one at TCU, Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, is $100,000 cash, top prize, and Baylor in Waco, Texas, is $50,000. So and those are just a few. There are many more, and I get great joy in coaching teams to go to these events. Last year, we had the first Ohio University team ever to get invited to present at Rice. We didn't win, but we had a great experience, learned a ton, and we've continued to work on that project since then, and have made a lot of progress. So even if you don't win money, there is a lot of benefit in going after these opportunities. More dogs barking off camera.
Paul, you have another question. And I don't know if we're going to know the answer. The two of us might be able to answer this.
Okay.
Is there going to be an Ohio University Student Expo pitch competition this year?
I mean, if we were able to do it last April at the beginning of the pandemic, if, God willing, wear a mucking fast, people. God willing, we'll be able to be back to normal in the spring in time for an in-person Expo and Expo pitch competition. But if we're not, I'm not going to let that stop us, right? You're not either, Rox, right?
No, we're going to do something.
We'll figure it out. So
that's a good way to say it. Yeah, if we can figure out the technology today, we'll figure out the Expo and the pitch competition.
Yeah, if only the good people out there understood the gremlins and chaos we had behind the scenes here.
But here we go.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that I have right now. So do you want to go into your videos?
Sure, we can show a couple of them.
Okay.
So this first one is a technology spun out of Ohio University. The company is called AEIOU Scientific. And Rox, why don't you go ahead and play that one? Uh-oh. More gremlins?
I'm Gary Wakeford, CEO of AEIOU Scientific,
or questions.
and we are in the business of advancing
I've
diagnostic
seen the video. Are you
innovation for
not?
bone health.
Oh, I'm not.
There's a huge problem in the U.S. right now in that there are over 2 million fragility fractures of bone every year,
okay.
And this is the direct result
just in
of the
case
presence
they
of
are not seeing the video, I'll preface it. So AEIOU received money from the university, about $1 million. They also received some state funding. And it was to develop a technology to look at osteoporosis, which is a huge issue in women. Basically, the scans that right now that are used for people don't work. We basically know that here everybody's going in getting their tests, and that the data that we're getting doesn't actually correlate with how likely somebody is to have a bone break. And that's kind of a scary thing when you realize how much money is being wasted and how much worry there is when the data doesn't correlate. So tell me, what happened when they presented? Go through the story in the presentation.
Well, you did it really well, Rox. I think you made the point, right, that they led with the human impact and how they were solving a problem and bringing good to the world. Not, they didn't lead with what's the underlying technology that makes it possible. They explained it, right? They they still made that convincing case, but they led with, here's why it matters. Here's the impact it's going to have in people's lives. And I think that's a really important lesson here that is, I think, fairly consistent for any developments like this where there is that sort of impact.
Well, okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of background and tell a little bit of a story too. So I work in the research division, and we had this competition where researchers had to come forward with their ideas, and the premise was that they had to be innovative, and that at the end of a 3-year period, they had to have some kind of a return on investment. And in this case, they were able to identify the problem. They identified a group of researchers who thought that they had a research solution, but at that point, they had never built a prototype, and they really hadn't spoken with a lot of doctors. And so the first thing that happened was our technology transfer office got them involved in what's called I-Corps, where they were able to go out and to speak to the market. And you know what happened, which was horrifying, was they thought for sure in their head that they were going to have a device that would work a certain way. But when they talked to the medical field said, hey, wait a minute, that's not the way that we actually put this into practice. Yep. Then what they found out is that healthcare is billed a certain way. And so it wasn't clear that even if they came to the market with this great technology, that the doctors would be able to bill it so that health insurance would actually pay for it. So what I was able to see over this period of time was that the researchers had to grapple with the idea of, I know the technical challenges, but now I'm hearing how we're going to employ our technology has to be market driven. Yeah. And I remember the researchers having a hard time grappling with that. That was one thing. And then the other thing was that they realized very quickly that they wanted to be researchers and scientists, and they had to partner with business people. And the first couple of conversations were really interesting because, of course, you had the scientists talking their techno speak, and you had the business talking their jargon speak, whatever you call that. I'm sure you guys have a word for it too. And to hear these two groups talking past each other and then finally making connections and building that common language was really interesting. I would like for you to talk about that a little bit. How do you mentor the people who have the idea to convey their idea to people who maybe don't speak the same language?
Rox, that is such a beautifully told story and a perfect point. And, you know, the much like my earlier point about, you know, how often does an idea get stolen versus how important is it to talk to people? The rarity of the idea getting stolen, in this case, you know, the need for researchers to talk to business, industry, and find ways to bridge that gap, and for researchers to get out of the building and not just assume that their vision birthed onto the world is going to be embraced in every imaginable way, because literally almost every single time you're going to run into some idiosyncrasy, some trap like AIOU discovered with medical billing that is going to fundamentally shift where you need to go to actually make it work. So, and that story plays out all the time, like way more often than it doesn't. So, as an example, you mentioned the I-Corps program. I am working with Dr. Jim Zhu in the Russ College of Engineering and a team of PhD mechanical electrical engineering students and some business students of mine to try to commercialize Jim's autonomous vehicle technology. And we've had exactly the same experience with that technology. We had a vision of, how are we going to deploy this technology in the world, and then
unmanned vehicles, basically drones, correct?
Well, or things like bringing autopilot capability from a firm like Tesla into the rest of us who can't afford a Tesla. So autopilot in my Subaru, or Rox, I don't know what you drive, but maybe you have a Tesla.
Not yet.
No, you're not one of those. You're not one of those townies who has a Tesla. I keep track. It's like, ooh, who's that? So we had this vision for how we were likely to be able to bring this technology to market. And when we actually got out in the world and talked to people, we got smacked in the face. It's like, no, we don't care. We had to go back to the drawing board and think about, all right, so what is the unique value we can provide, and what problem can we really solve? And we're still working on it. We haven't figured it all out yet, but it's becoming clear that our path is likely to be as a partner to businesses in the auto industry supply chain, be that the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers like, Ford, General Motors, Honda, et cetera, or their tier one suppliers, not direct to consumer as an aftermarket product. So it repeats itself over and over and over again. And if you're tempted to sit there thinking, well, yeah, that's everybody else, but that's not me. I know that this is exactly what my customers want. If you talk to them, if you talk to the industry partners, and until you can say you've talked to 20, 40, 50, 100, and I don't mean surveys, right? I don't mean like, here's a Qualtrics, fill out these 10 questions, multiple choice, and we'll do the crosstabs, and we'll get this beautiful data, and that'll tell us our path. No, you have to sit down with people or on Zoom or Teams or whatever, and look them in the eye and have a conversation with them, and get them to tell stories and listen and collect all that data and take a very scientific, methodical approach to it, and then analyze and say, what does this tell us? And if it tells you your original idea was wrong, celebrate. More often than not, if the results you're getting from those conversations only validate your original idea, there might have been a flaw in your approach. You might have had a flaw in how you talk to people. You might have pitched the idea too much. Maybe you talked to friends and family and they were agreeing with you because they love you and they want to support you, not really giving you unbiased advice. If you take nothing else, that is a huge lesson. And thank you so much, Rox, for bringing that up.
You have another question.
Oh, great.
This is from an alum. You're going to like this. I am an alum. I consider myself an entrepreneur, and I would like to give back. How do I become involved?
That is a fantastic, beautiful question, and thank you so much. So I'll say a couple things, right? One is we are in the Center for Entrepreneurship in the process of trying to do a better job connecting our current students and our entrepreneurial alumni out in the world. If you're willing to send me an email or hit me up on LinkedIn, we can have a conversation about engaging you in a mentor-mentee relationship with students. And frankly, your time and advice and coaching is probably the most valuable thing that you can do. And certainly, there's opportunity to guest speak in classes. We do events in the Center for Entrepreneurship all the time. So very happy, would be thrilled to talk about how we can engage in that way with your time.
You got a thumbs up, so you might be getting it.
And if you are so inclined, they're also giving opportunities. So the Bobcat Seed Fund, as an example, has an account with the foundation. We have had great early success. We've got enough money for about another $12,000 to $15,000 of grants this year. And if we don't raise more resources, it might not be able to continue. So supporting that would be tremendous as well.
What are the best qualities of a good entrepreneur? I think I have ideas. I just don't know if I have what it takes.
So if it's comforting in any way, I'm sure there are others out there that I haven't met and haven't spoken to. But all the people that I know, at some point in their career, and frankly, maybe a lot of the time, in a moment of candor and quiet reflection, and maybe just openly saying it, we're all making it up as we go. We're all trying to figure it out as we go. And I know entrepreneurs who have been wildly successful, far more successful than I've been, and even they, in their next iteration, they're just trying to figure it out. So there ought to be great comfort in knowing that you're not alone. The other thing that I would add is that there are lots of different types of entrepreneurs out in the world. There are extroverted entrepreneurs, there are introverted entrepreneurs, there are scientific founders, there are non-scientific founders. There are people who are very adept in business dimensions. There are people who are much more adept in soft skills and people management. Not that isn't a business skill. Be careful, my colleagues are going to kill me. But the one trait that all entrepreneurs that I know have in common is perseverance. That it's going to get hard at some point. And part of why passion and story matter so much is that you're going to have to fight through, persevere through some difficulty, some challenges, right? If you Google the roller coaster of the emotional journey, there's some really fun images out there that talk about, oh, this is great, and bang, we hit a cliff. Something bad happened. It didn't work in a lab. Now what do we do? Or we showed our baby to customers and they said our baby was ugly. Now what do we do? So there's this trough of sorrow where we're struggling to get through it, right? But it's the perseverance that makes the real difference.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I have held this off. You have alluded to the fact that you were an entrepreneur and you haven't talked about it. So I've had a few questions. What's your background?
So I'm an alum. I came to OU in 1992. Oh my God, I'm old. Graduated in 96 with a degree in political science from the Honors Tutorial College. Loved every bit of it. I networked my way into a investment banking job in Chicago in 1996 with another alum who became a mentor, who had been a mentor, became a mentor. Then that job there was a little bit of politics involved and some business. Fast forward to 2000, there was a group of somewhat crazy people that raised a venture fund to invest in Southeast Ohio, Northern Kentucky, West Virginia, called Adina Ventures. I joined it, and we invested in early stage companies here. Had some success. I led a deal with a real estate company based in Morgantown that ultimately was purchased by Realtor.com for a nice amount in cash, which was nice for everybody. And that company had moments where it was very near death. I have tried my own startups. I've worked in other people's startups. I've had some blow up in my face. I've had some near misses. I very nearly sold a company to Google. We ran out of gas because I would say that the team wasn't right. And I was, the other thing I would add is that, the difference between success and failure really is about the quality of the team. And you can have the best product in the world, but if the team isn't quite right, you're not going to make it. Versus, you might have a mediocre product, and the great team is gonna find a way almost all the time. So and while I was doing my own startups, I worked on a music thing a few years ago. A friend asked me to teach a entrepreneurship seminar in the professional MBA program here at OU. It was a nights and weekends thing, a side hustle, and I did it and fell in love with it. And it's like, oh, I like this, and maybe I want to do this a little more. And candidly, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I work as hard as I ever did, but the stress of teaching is not the same as trying to make payroll. So I know that the reason I'm not doing it now is both because I love teaching, I love doing what I'm doing, and it's hard.
It is. I was in industry for about 12 years, and it was a small startup pharmaceutical company. We ended up selling the company. I needed a year off after that. Yeah. So I understand. It's one of the most exhilarating things that I think that you can do. But it can be all-consuming and very hard to have the work-life balance sometimes that I think that we do enjoy in academia. But I think that you and I are incredibly fortunate now that we get to take what we know and we get to try and impart that knowledge to the next generation of students who, when I look at them, I go, oh my God, they're so much better than I was at that age. They blow me away. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for, taking the time today. We have literally just a few seconds left. So if you want to say anything before we wrap up, that would be great.
Well, I just say thank you. And you made the point about work-life balance. I need to say that I have taken the advice of a person who's much smarter than I am, better liked than I am, and lives with me, that has talks about work-life integration. Thank you all out there for your questions, your attention. Rox, thanks for leading this, and all the folks behind the scenes making this possible. Please, if I can help you, please hit me up.
Excellent. Thanks so much.